At my wife's family barbecue, her sister joked, "If you disappear tomorrow, no one will miss you." It was the kind of joke that's too smooth to stick, too sharp to ignore. "If you disappear tomorrow," Claire said, her beer bottle dangling from 2 fingers like she didn't care whether it dropped or not, "no one will miss you." She said it casually, like people say things at barbecues when the sun's too hot and the food's too greasy and the air is just thick enough to make you bold. There was a pause in the conversation, one of those strange, inconvenient silences that happen at the worst possible moment, and then she dropped it. Like a punchline, only no one laughed. There were 4 of us standing near the grill. Claire, me, her husband Tom, and Marcy, one of her old college friends whose name I always forgot. I just made some throwaway comment about how I couldn't find the beer I brought, a small, stupid complaint, and Claire responded with that. I blinked. Smiled faintly. Looked around for a cue. Tom chuckled, not because it was funny, but because he didn't know what else to do. Marcy looked down at her cup. No one said anything else. And then, as if it hadn't happened, the conversation moved on. Someone brought up football. Someone else pointed out that the burgers were burning. I said nothing. Claire didn't even look at me when she said it. She just turned, called out to her son, and walked away like she'd flicked a crumb off her shirt. But I stood there, holding a warm drink in a plastic cup, trying to process what I'd just heard. My wife, Allison, was across the yard talking to her cousin and an elderly aunt who'd flown in from Minnesota. I caught her eye briefly, but she didn't seem to notice anything was wrong. Or maybe she did and chose not to ask. Allison had that way of skimming over things, not cruelly, just delicately. She always preferred smooth surfaces. I stood alone for a moment longer, then wandered toward the cooler, pretending to look for something. My thoughts were loud, but my face stayed quiet. It wasn't just what Claire said, it was how easily she said it. Like it had already been decided. I met Allison 5 years ago, at a co-working space in the city. She was doing non-profit work back then, always tired, always late, always apologizing with that soft, self-deprecating laugh that made you feel sorry for her and charmed at the same time. I was working on a freelance tech contract and didn't have many friends in the building. She started eating lunch near me, and one day we just started talking. 2 years later, we got married. Her family welcomed me easily. Too easily, in hindsight. Sunday brunches. Birthday texts. Group photos. Her mom called me sweet the first time we met. Her dad asked me what I did for a living, nodded, and moved on. It was pleasant. Smooth. No drama. For a while, I told myself I had lucked out, that this family was a bomb compared to my own fractured upbringing. But standing there by the grill, with the scent of charred meat in the air and the sting of Claire's words still fresh, something clicked in me. I realized I'd never really been in the family. I'd just been tolerated, maybe even liked, the way you like a polite tenant living in the guest room. I didn't say anything to Allison that night. We got home late. She took a shower, tossed her clothes into the hamper, and collapsed on the bed, muttering something about being exhausted. I sat in the living room for a while, scrolling through my phone, not seeing much of anything. It's strange how something so small, one sentence, one joke, can change how you look at everything. I started remembering things. Like how Claire always called me the tech guy instead of using my name. How her brother once asked if I was still doing that computer stuff, like I was fixing printers in a strip mall. How, during Christmas last year, everyone bought gifts for each other and I got a bottle of off-brand wine with no tag. Little things. Easy to ignore on their own. But not anymore. The next morning, Allison was already gone when I woke up. She left a note on the fridge about a dentist appointment. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and stared at the same project I'd been working on all week. But I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept circling the barbecue. The tone of Claire's voice. The indifference in her face. And the question I couldn't let go of. What if she was right? What if I did disappear, tomorrow, next week, next month, and no one noticed? Would Allison miss me? Would she cry, or just become quieter at family gatherings for a while? Would they talk about me like I'd been a phase? I hated that the question stuck. I texted Mark, an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. Got time for a drink this week? He replied almost immediately. Anytime. You good? Just need a break from the in-laws. That was close enough to the truth. That evening, when Allison came home, I asked casually, "Did you hear what Claire said yesterday?" She was standing at the sink, rinsing spinach for a salad. "What do you mean?" "She joked that if I disappeared, no one would miss me." Allison paused, then shrugged slightly. "Yeah. Claire's got a weird sense of humor. That didn't seem like a joke. She probably didn't mean anything by it." There it was again, that smoothness. That instinct to iron everything out. "Did you think it was funny?" I asked. She turned, towel in hand, brow slightly furrowed. "No, not really. But I don't think it's worth getting worked up about. You know how she is." I nodded. Said nothing more. But inside, something had already changed. Not a rupture. Just a crack. The kind you don't notice until the light hits it the wrong way. 2 days later, I met Mark at a quiet bar near the train station, the kind of place where the wood is scratched, the lights are dim, and nobody cares who you are unless you're not tipping. We hadn't seen each other in months, maybe longer. I'd been telling myself life was just busy. Work, marriage, time slipping away like it always does. But the truth was, I'd stopped reaching out. I think, somewhere in the middle of learning to be part of Allison's life, I forgot how to keep my own. Mark hugged me like he hadn't realized he missed me until that moment. We ordered drinks, slid into a booth, and for a while just talked about things that didn't matter. Work. Rent. The unbearable heat. He told me about a woman he was dating, someone new, someone smart, someone probably already slipping away. I listened, nodded, laughed in the right places. Then he said, "You look tired." "Long week," I said, avoiding the real answer. "You and Allison good?" I sipped my beer. "Yeah. We're fine." He raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like fine." I didn't answer right away. Then I told him. Not everything. Just the barbecue. The comment. The way Allison brushed it off. Mark's expression darkened slightly, the way it always did when he heard something that didn't sit right. "That's messed up, man." "Yeah. What did Allison say when you brought it up?" I gave a small shrug. "Said it was a joke. Claire's weird. Not worth dwelling on." He shook his head. "Still. That's not nothing. That kind of stuff sticks." It did. It stuck like splinters under skin. After I got home that night, Allison was watching something on the couch, some drama with low dialogue and long stares. She smiled when I walked in. "Hey. How was Mark?" "Good. Same as always." I sat down beside her, but I didn't reach for her hand. Something had shifted in me. Not away from her, but away from the version of us I'd been holding on to. There was a gap between us now. Not physical. Something quieter. I watched the flicker of the TV light dance across her face. I knew that face, every curve, every twitch, the way her expression drifted when she was thinking about work or worrying about something but didn't want to say it. And I realized something. We were good at being around each other. But lately, we weren't good at reaching each other. The next weekend, we had dinner with Allison's parents. Just the 4 of us. It was casual, polite, like always. Her dad talked about the neighbor's dog problems. Her mom asked if we were thinking about kids yet. I smiled. Allison gave her usual, "maybe someday," answer. But I couldn't focus. All I could think about was how Claire's words had slipped under my skin, and no one at this table had noticed. I didn't bring it up again. I couldn't. Because the more I thought about it, the more it felt like no one would understand. Not really. And that's when the thought first crossed my mind, not in a dramatic, life-changing way, but in a slow, creeping fashion. Maybe I don't belong here as much as I thought I did. I started seeing things differently after that. The way Allison's family always scheduled things without checking with me first, holidays, birthdays, trips. The way I was always Allison's husband, never just me. The way I stopped bringing up my own family because every time I did, someone would quietly change the subject. The way, during dinner one night, someone asked Allison how her work was going but didn't ask me anything at all. Little things. And once you start noticing, you can't unsee them. One afternoon, I stood in our bedroom and looked at the framed wedding photo on the dresser. We looked happy. Not posed. Not fake. Real. But I couldn't remember the exact moment it was taken. I couldn't remember what I was thinking. I wondered if Allison could. I wanted to ask her, but didn't. Instead, I started going for longer walks. After work. Before bed. No destination. Just walking. Not to clear my head, that was already too full. But to be somewhere that wasn't here. I didn't hate her family. I didn't even dislike Claire, really. What she said was cruel, yes. But what haunted me more was how easy it was for her to say it. As if it had been floating there in the background for years, just waiting for the right silence to fall into. And I wondered, was that how they all felt? That if I disappeared, it wouldn't matter? That if I hadn't shown up at that barbecue, or any of the birthdays, or the holiday dinners, the family photo would look just fine without me? I started a note on my phone. Nothing dramatic. Just a list. Things I miss about before the marriage. My own schedule. Conversations where I didn't feel like a guest. Laughing without watching someone's face for a reaction. Being seen, not just included. It wasn't a resentment list. It wasn't even a warning sign. It was just me trying to understand what was shifting inside. One night, after Allison had gone to bed, I sat on the balcony with a glass of water and watched the cars pass below. It was late. The city buzzed low and steady. I thought about calling someone, my brother, maybe, or my old college roommate, but didn't. Instead, I imagined vanishing. Not dying. Not running away. Just, fading. Quietly. Pulling back piece by piece until I was only half there, like static on a radio signal. Would she notice? Would anyone? It's hard to tell the moment you start pulling away. You don't wake up one morning and decide, today, I'll be less here. It happens quietly. You respond with shorter answers. You listen more than you talk, not out of interest but out of fatigue. You stop offering opinions because no one really asked for them. And before you know it, you've folded yourself up into something smaller. A version of you that takes up less space. Less time. Less noise. Allison didn't say anything for a while. Or maybe she did, and I wasn't listening. I think she noticed, the silence, the long walks, the way I started staying up later just to avoid sharing the same bed at the same time. She tried to bridge the gap once. We were sitting at the kitchen table, a takeout bag between us, some lukewarm noodles neither of us were really eating. She looked up at me, fork in hand, and said, "You've been different lately." I kept chewing. Swallowed. Just tired. Work? I nodded. A lie, but an easy one. She gave a soft, nervous laugh. Maybe we should take a trip. Just the two of us. Get away. I nodded again, not really agreeing, just moving the conversation along. I miss us, she said quietly, and I felt it like a stone dropping in water. But I didn't say it back. Not because I didn't miss something, but because I didn't know what us meant anymore. We went to a family brunch the following Sunday. Her mom made waffles. Her dad talked about remodeling the deck. Her cousins were there, kids in tow, the usual noise and clatter of a household that liked pretending everything was always fine. I stood in the kitchen at one point, plate in hand, watching Claire talk animatedly to her sister about some work drama. She glanced at me once, gave me a nod, nothing more. No smile. No warmth. Just acknowledgement. It occurred to me then that I hadn't spoken to her, not really, since the barbecue. She hadn't apologized. I hadn't brought it up. I think that's what bothered me most. Not the words, but the fact that they could be said and then simply left. No repair. No acknowledgement. Just swept into the rhythm of life, as if I didn't have the right to be hurt. That night, I asked Allison, "Do you think your family likes me?" She was brushing her teeth. She paused, toothbrush mid-air. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do they like me? Or just, accept me?" She rinsed her mouth. Turned to face me. "Of course they like you. Even Claire?" She hesitated. Just for a beat. But it was enough. "Claire's complicated," she said. I nodded. "I think she just jokes without thinking." She meant it. Allison exhaled, long and quiet. "Why are we talking about this again?" "Because I can't stop thinking about it. She says things. She doesn't mean them. Okay, I said. But I didn't believe her. And I think, deep down, she didn't believe herself either. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded by people who never really look at you. Not just see you, look. Deeply. Like you matter. Like your presence has weight. Lately, I felt like a placeholder. A husband in title, a body in photos, a polite voice in the room. I wasn't being mistreated. I wasn't being hated. I was being overlooked. And somehow, that felt worse. One night, I found myself walking in a part of town I hadn't been to in years. Near the old train yard, where the warehouses had been turned into art spaces and coffee shops. I used to come here before Allison. Sit in cafes with a book I wouldn't read. Just be. There was a bar I used to like. I walked in, sat down, ordered a drink. The bartender didn't ask questions. No one did. For a moment, I imagined what it would feel like to start over. New name. New apartment. No explanations. Would Allison look for me? Would her family? Would Claire even notice I was gone? I got home late. Allison was asleep. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. A message from someone. I didn't check. I lay beside her, eyes open, listening to her breathe. And I felt like a guest in my own home. Like someone had invited me in for dinner once and then forgot to ask me to leave. By the time Allison's birthday rolled around, I'd already rehearsed my part. Smile. Gift. Dinner reservation. Tell her she looks beautiful. Don't bring up anything real. Don't let the quiet moments stretch too long. It wasn't about lying. It was about managing the version of myself she still believed in. We went to a nice place downtown. Candlelight, soft jazz, menus that didn't list prices. I made conversation. Asked about her work. Listened to her vent about a coworker who kept taking credit for her ideas. I even laughed once, sincerely, when she described the way her boss called a strategy meeting, and then talked about his dog for 20 minutes. For a few minutes, we felt like us again, or some version of us. Then the bill came. She reached for it, I waved her off. A ritual. On the walk home, she slipped her hand into mine. I let it stay there. But all I could think about was how this version of us only came out on schedule, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. Like a coat pulled from the closet when the weather demands it. And when it was over, it went right back in. 2 days later, she brought up the barbecue again. Out of nowhere. We were folding laundry on the bed. She held up one of my shirts and said, "Claire can be cruel sometimes." I looked at her. "You've never said that before." "I know," she said quietly. I think I didn't want to admit it. We folded in silence for a moment. "I've been thinking about that day," she added. "And how you reacted. I should have said something. I should have defended you." I nodded. "But you didn't." I didn't think she meant it. But now. I don't know. Does it matter what she meant? I said. You heard it. Everyone did. And no one said anything. She sat down, holding a towel in her lap. You've been different since then. No, I said. I've been more myself. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. She looked away. That's not fair. Isn't it? I wasn't angry. I wasn't even trying to argue. I just needed her to understand that what changed wasn't sudden, it was the slow surfacing of something that had been buried under politeness and routines. And now it was visible. Ugly. But real. The next family event was a baby shower for her cousin. Held at Claire's house. Allison asked if I wanted to go. I said yes. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to know if I could walk into that house, see those people, and feel anything besides the numb ache of being tolerated. The day was warm. Her family gathered in the backyard, balloons, finger sandwiches, laughing children running between tables. Claire was at the center of it all, as always. Confident. Sharp. Magnetic in that way that draws people in but never makes them feel quite safe. When we arrived, she gave me a quick nod. Hey. I nodded back. It was the first time we'd spoken, even a word, since the joke. She didn't mention it. Didn't apologize. Just moved on. I stood with a drink, talking to Allison's uncle about house repairs. I watched the way her family laughed together. The easy rhythm of people who've known each other forever. I didn't hate them. That would have been simpler. What I felt was closer to grief. The slow, quiet realization that I'd mistaken proximity for belonging. Allison noticed. She stayed close to me all afternoon. Touched my back as she passed. Checked in with her eyes. We didn't talk about it, but she knew. Something had changed. She could feel me slipping, and I could see her trying to pull me back. But I didn't know if there was anything to hold on to anymore. Later that night, after we got home, I sat on the edge of the bed while she brushed her hair in the bathroom. I said, "Do you think we'd still be together if we didn't have your family in the picture?" She paused. "What do you mean? If it was just you and me? No holidays. No barbecues. No Claire." She looked at me in the mirror. "I don't know." That hurt more than any yes or no. Because it was honest. And I couldn't blame her. I started sleeping on the couch some nights. She didn't protest. She just asked, one morning, "Is this about needing space or already having one foot out the door?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know. But because I was still deciding. I imagined leaving. Not dramatically. No suitcase. No slammed doors. Just, disappearing in plain sight. Waking up one day, stepping outside, and not coming back. And I thought about how long it would take for someone to ask where I went. The thing about drifting is that no one notices until you're already gone. You start by leaving the room early. Then you leave conversations half finished. Then you stop showing up in small ways, not out of spite, but because you've stopped believing your presence matters. One morning, I woke before Allison. The light was still pale, the sky gray and soft. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee I didn't really want and listened to the stillness of our apartment. I could hear the gentle whir of the fridge, the muffled traffic outside, and the quiet ache of a home that no longer felt like mine. There was no single moment when I decided I had to leave. But that morning, I realized I already had. Emotionally, mentally, I'd stepped out weeks ago. I was just still physically here, out of habit. Out of guilt. Out of the fear that if I left, it would somehow confirm everything Claire said. That I would disappear and no one would miss me. But staying hadn't proven her wrong. It had only made me disappear more slowly. That day, I packed a small overnight bag. Not with the intention of running away, just with the need to breathe somewhere else for a while. I left a note. Handwritten. Short. "I need space. Not to punish you, and not because I don't care. But because I'm afraid that if I stay, I'll lose what little I still recognize in myself. I don't know what happens next. But I can't pretend anymore." I didn't sign it. She would know. I booked a room at a cheap motel near the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls and quiet. I turned off my phone. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. That night, I sat on the bed with a notebook. I didn't write a journal entry or a plan. Just words. Scattered. Incomplete. But mine. Words like, "Disappearing is easier when no one pulls you back. You can be loved and still feel invisible. Being missed is not the same as being seen. I'm still here. Somewhere." Days passed. I walked. Sat in cafes. Read half a novel. Slept without anyone next to me for the first time in years. I thought I'd feel free. Instead, I just felt real. And that was something. Eventually, I turned my phone back on. There were messages. From Allison. A few from Mark. One from Allison's mother, formal, oddly composed. None from Claire. I read Allison's first message 3 times before responding. "I miss you. Please tell me you're okay." I replied, simply. "I'm okay. I just don't know if we are." We didn't talk for a few days after that. Then she asked if I'd meet her. I agreed. We met at the park where we'd had our second date, back when things felt weightless. She looked tired, but calm. We sat on a bench under a tree, leaves rustling like whispers overhead. She said, "I don't want to lose you. And I said, I think I already lost myself. We sat in silence. I didn't know you felt so alone, she said finally. I didn't know either, I said. Not really. Not until I heard her say it. That joke? I nodded. It wasn't the words. It was how easy they came. How no one blinked. She didn't defend it. Not this time. Instead, she said, I don't know if I can fix that. I don't know if I want you to, I said. And we sat with that. There's no clean ending to stories like this. No final fight. No breakthrough kiss in the rain. Just a quiet, mutual understanding that some distances don't close overnight. We didn't decide anything that day. No ultimatums. No deadlines. Just truth, spoken plainly between two people who had stopped pretending. Weeks later, I moved into a small apartment a few neighborhoods away. Allison didn't fight it. She helped me find the place. We talked occasionally, kindly, cautiously. Her family didn't reach out. Mark did. He helped me move a few boxes, stayed for pizza and a game on TV. At one point, he asked, do you think they'll ever get it? I said, I don't think they ever saw it. Months passed. I kept the wedding photo. Not out of longing, but because it was real, once. I kept the notebook, too. I kept writing. And one morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't feel like I was fading anymore. I felt like someone still becoming. If I disappeared now, someone might notice. But more importantly, I would. And maybe that's enough. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.